You know how they say your gut feeling is never wrong? For weeks, maybe even months, this knot in my stomach had been screaming at me that something was broken in my relationship. It was a quiet hum of anxiety at first, a background noise I kept trying to ignore, to rationalize. God, I wanted to be wrong. I desperately did. But one night, a small, unassuming black box on our living room wall showed me the one thing I could never, ever unsee. This isn't a story about suspicion or gossip. This is the story of how I watched my world fall apart, live and in real time, through the cold, unblinking eye of a security camera. Our story, before it turned into this story, felt like the kind you hear in songs. Or at least, that's what I told myself. 7 years. We'd met in college, figured out our chaotic early 20s together, and built a life that felt solid, real. We had an apartment filled with mismatched furniture and a history of inside jokes. We had our routines. Sunday morning coffee, Tuesday night takeout, the way he'd always leave his socks on the floor, and how I'd pretend to be annoyed by it. It was a life built on this comfortable predictability that I mistook for being unbreakable. I loved him. I thought that love was the single most reliable fact in my universe. And the camera, that was my idea, which is the sickest irony of all. It wasn't even born from suspicion, not at first. Our neighborhood had a few package thefts, and after a birthday gift for my mom was stolen from our doorstep, I decided we needed one. It was a practical solution to a practical problem. I remember the day the little box arrived, promising peace of mind. We even installed it together, laughing as we tried to get the angle just right to cover the front door and living room. He made a joke, waving at the lens and saying, "Smile, we're on camera." It felt like just another team project. For a few weeks, it did exactly what it promised. It gave me that peace of mind. If I was working late, I could pull up the app and see our quiet, empty living room. It was reassuring. That camera was supposed to be a guardian, a silent protector of the life I loved. It never once occurred to me that its whole purpose would shift so dramatically, that instead of protecting me from the outside world, it would show me the enemy was already inside. The camera was supposed to watch for strangers, but it ended up showing me I'd been sleeping next to a stranger for 7 years. The shift was subtle, so subtle you could almost miss it. It started with his phone. It used to just be there, on the kitchen counter, wherever. Suddenly, it was like it was glued to his hand. Always in his pocket, always screen down on the table. When I'd walk into the room, he'd end conversations, angle texts away from me. When I'd ask who he was talking to, the answer was always a vague, "Oh, just work." Then came the late nights at the office. He was a project manager, so long hours weren't completely out of the blue, but they started happening all the time. Trying to hit a deadline, he'd say, "The team really needs me." I wanted to be supportive. I'd make him a late dinner, listen to him complain about his boss, and try to swallow that acidic taste of doubt. But the excuses started to feel thin, rehearsed. There was a new distance in his eyes. When I tried to talk to him about it, to close the gap I felt growing between us, he just hit me with this wall of defensive gaslighting. "You're being paranoid. Why don't you trust me? I'm exhausted from work and I come home to this?" He was a master at it. He'd twist my genuine concern into an accusation, making me feel like I was the crazy one. I really started to question my own sanity. Was I just insecure? Was I making problems out of nothing? And that's the sick part about being betrayed. It makes you doubt your own mind, the very gut feeling that's screaming to save you. The moment it all snapped, the moment that quiet hum of anxiety became a blaring alarm, was a Wednesday night. He was at a mandatory team dinner. Around 9 p.m., I was scrolling through social media when a photo popped up from one of his colleagues. "Great team outing," the caption read. The timestamp was from 10 minutes ago. His whole team was there, but he wasn't. A cold dread just washed over me. My fingers were trembling, but I texted him, "Hey, how's dinner?" The reply was almost instant. So boring. Can't wait to get home to you. Prob's another hour. The lie was so blatant, so effortless. He wasn't at a boring dinner. He was somewhere else, and he was lying, right to my face. In that moment, something inside me broke. All the self-doubt just evaporated and was replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I had to know. Not tomorrow, right now. And I knew exactly how I was going to find out. My eyes drifted to the corner of the room, to the small, dark lens of the security camera. My heart was hammering against my ribs as I unlocked my phone. My thumb hovered over the camera app, a portal to a truth I wasn't sure I was ready for. Some small, desperate part of me was still praying for a rational explanation. Maybe he left early. Maybe he'd be walking through the door any second, alone. Maybe I was about to feel really, really stupid. I took a deep breath and tapped the screen. The live feed loaded, a grainy, black and white window into my own living room. It was silent. The couch we picked out together, the rug I spent weeks looking for, all exactly as I'd left it. For a minute, there was nothing, just an empty, silent room. The silence was agonizing. And then, it happened. Motion. The front door opened. My breath caught in my throat. He stepped inside, and for just 1 second, this huge wave of relief washed over me. He was home. He was alone. It was all in my head. But then he stepped aside, holding the door open, and someone else walked in. It was her. A woman from his office I'd met a few times. The one he always called just a work friend. My brain just couldn't process it. What was she doing here? In our apartment? At 9:30 on a Wednesday night? He closed the door, and the world outside disappeared. It was just the three of us now. Them, in my living room, and me, miles away, a ghost in my own home. They weren't talking. He took her coat, and the gesture was so casual, so familiar, it made my stomach turn. This wasn't the first time. The gut feeling I'd had for months wasn't paranoia. It was an echo of a history I was just now seeing. He hung her coat next to mine. They moved further into the room, right into the camera's view. My phone was shaking in my hand, or maybe that was me. They sat on the couch, not far apart like friends would, but close, her leg pressed against his. He said something I couldn't hear, and she laughed, a silent movie on my screen. Then she leaned in and tucked a piece of hair behind his ear. The intimacy of that little gesture, it felt like a punch to the gut. It was a gesture that belonged to me. That was our couch. This was our home. My sanctuary was being violated, and I was forced to watch, powerless. I couldn't stop watching. It was horrifying, but I couldn't look away. My mind needed to record every single detail, burning the evidence into my memory. They were talking quietly, their heads close. He reached out and put his hand on her knee. He squeezed it, and I watched on my phone as she placed her hand right over his. They stayed like that for what felt like forever. Two statues of betrayal in the center of the room I paid for. And then, the moment that shattered everything into a million pieces. He leaned in, and she met him halfway. They kissed. It wasn't a quick peck. It was long and deep, full of a familiarity that told me this was a well-rehearsed scene. And just like that, the world went silent. The drumming in my chest just stopped. All I felt was this deep, terrifying calm. The anxiety I'd been carrying for months was gone, replaced by a solid block of ice. There was no more doubt, no more second-guessing. There was only the truth in 1080p. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just closed the app. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out of my friend's apartment. The drive home was a blur. My only thought was, get out of my house. I parked and walked up to my own front door. I could hear their faint laughter through it. I put my key in the lock, turned it, and pushed the door open. The laughter died. They sprang apart on the couch like guilty teenagers, their faces a mask of pure shock. His eyes were wide with panic. Hers were darting around, looking for an escape that wasn't there. "What are you doing here?" he stammered. "I thought you were at Jessica's." I just looked at him, letting the silence hang in the air. I watched the gears turning in his head as he desperately tried to invent a lie. "It's not what it looks like," he finally managed, the oldest, most pathetic cliché in the book. That's when I spoke. My voice came out eerily steady. "It's not what it looks like?" I held up my phone. "Really? Because it looks exactly like what I've been watching for the last 20 minutes. I watched the color drain from his face. The realization hit him. His eyes darted to the corner of the room, to the camera, the witness. "You watched?" he whispered, horrified. Her face was a picture of humiliation. "I watched everything," I said, my voice like ice. "I watched you walk in. I watched you take her coat. I watched you sit on our couch and hold her hand. And yes, I watched you kiss her. Live." So please, tell me again how it's not what it looks like. The argument that followed was a mess of excuses. It didn't mean anything. We've been having problems. You've been so distant. He tried to blame me, to minimize it, but the proof was absolute. That camera had stolen all his power, his ability to lie and twist things. There was no more gaslighting. There was only the cold, hard recorded truth. There wasn't some big, dramatic fight. The rage had burned out, leaving only the cold ashes of resolve. I looked at the woman on my couch, her face burning with shame. "You should go," I said, my voice totally flat. She practically ran out the door, and then it was just the two of us, standing in the ruins of our life. He tried to come near me, his hands out, pleading. "We can fix this," he begged, tears in his eyes. But I was looking at a total stranger. The love I felt for him, the foundation of my world, had been obliterated in less than an hour. You can't fix something that's been turned to dust. "No," I said, the word final. "We can't." I just walked right past him into our bedroom and grabbed it overnight bag. I threw in some clothes, my toothbrush, my phone charger. He stood in the doorway, watching me, crying and making broken promises. But his words were just static to me. They couldn't erase the images seared into my brain. "I'll stay at my sister's," I said, zipping the bag. "When I come back tomorrow, I want you and all of your stuff gone." He started to protest, but I just held up a hand. "It's over," I said. "You did this." I walked out of the bedroom, past the little black camera on the wall, the silent witness to the end of my world. I didn't look back. I closed the door on my apartment, on my relationship, on 7 years of my life, and I walked away. The next few days and weeks were a complete blur of pain and packing and just grief. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But in the middle of all that heartbreak, I felt something totally unexpected. Empowerment. The camera, the thing that caused my heartbreak, was also the thing that set me free. It gave me the undeniable truth, the ultimate weapon against the gaslighting and the doubt that he'd been feeding me for months. It let me see reality with my own eyes, leaving no room for manipulation. It's a horrible truth, but sometimes the heart of your home becomes the scene of your greatest betrayal. But if my story proves anything, it's that your gut feeling, that little voice you keep trying to shut up, is almost always right. Trust it, always. The truth can be brutal, but it's the only thing that can set you free. If you've ever been through something like this, or if this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. It really helps to know you're not alone. And if you'd like to see more stories about finding truth in the hardest places, please consider subscribing. Thank you for listening.